My name is Raymond Elias Caffrey, and the story I am about to tell you is not one I ever thought would come from my lips. I was born in 1947 in Huntsville, Texas, a place most people in this country know because of its prison, because of its death row. I grew up just a few miles from that steel and concrete world where men awaited the electric chair. My father had worked there as a guard, and he carried the sound of executions in his voice. He spoke of men walking their final mile with trembling knees, and though he told those stories with bitterness, I can still remember the way his eyes shifted when he did. My mother was his opposite in every way. She was a Southern Baptist who dragged me to revival tents where preachers shouted about hell and salvation, with sweat dripping off their faces. My childhood was a battlefield between faith and fury, and I was caught in the middle. As a boy, I was haunted by those stories my father carried. By my teens, I was already fascinated with crime and the people who committed it. When others read novels or sports magazines, I was thumbing through articles about Bundy, Gacy, and Ramirez. I told myself it was curiosity, but deep inside I knew it was more than that. Darkness was whispering to me even when I laughed about the church bells my mother loved. I once told a friend of mine that the devil whispered louder in Huntsville than the preachers ever shouted. That wasn't just a joke, it was a confession. I became a truck driver and later worked oil fields in Louisiana, drifting from one job to another, drinking too much, keeping everyone at arm's length. I mocked preachers but feared the silence of the night when I had to face my own mortality. By my late 50s, my health was already failing. High blood pressure, sleep apnea, chest pains, and a heart that seemed to be warning me. Yet I laughed, because laughing was easier than changing. Then came the night of March 14th, 2008. I was 61 years old, driving across a bayou bridge in Louisiana after a long haul. An 18-wheeler swerved and clipped me. My truck broke through the guardrail, and instead of falling into the water below, it crashed into the rusted skeleton of an old riverboat casino that had burned years earlier. The cab was crushed like a coffin of steel and glass. I was pronounced clinically dead for 11 minutes. That was when it began. The moment my heart stopped, everything around me was swallowed in a darkness deeper than anything I had ever known. It wasn't the kind of dark you find in the middle of the night or inside a cave. This was a living, suffocating void, a blackness that pressed against my skin like it wanted to crawl inside me. At first, I thought maybe this was unconsciousness, just the flicker of a dying brain. But no, this was awareness, sharper than life itself. I could hear things, I could smell things, and I could feel myself falling. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of sulfur and rotting flesh. Each breath burned my lungs, yet I couldn't stop inhaling. I tried to cry out, but the sound that left my throat was swallowed before it could even escape. Beneath me, there was ground, but it wasn't earth. It pulsed like flesh, quivering under my steps as if it were alive. Every step I took, something beneath the surface writhed, like worms pressed against thin skin. Then came the voices. Low at first, then louder, until they were surrounding me. Whispers twisted into screams, laughter that mocked me in every word I had ever spoken against God. I heard my own phrases repeated back to me like a cruel echo chamber. The devil whispers louder in Huntsville than the church bells ring. Those very words I had spoken decades earlier were being spit back into my ears, but this time they were dripping with malice, repeated by unseen mouths. Shapes began to move in the dark. At first, I thought they were strangers, shadows without form. But as they drew closer, I recognized faces. Faces I had known. A coworker I had drunk with who had died years ago. A childhood friend who had overdosed. Even my own cousin, gone long before his time. They looked hollow, their eyes burning with regret, their mouths wide with screams that never seemed to end. One of them reached for me, skin peeling off his fingers like wax, and as he touched my arm, I felt every sin of my life pressed into me, hot like iron. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. All around me were pits, endless pits, where people writhed in fire that burned but never consumed. They screamed, but the flames seemed to feed on their very words. I saw a woman who reminded me of my mother's church friends, the kind who had sat in pews every Sunday with folded hands. She was screaming, "I thought I was saved." Her words pierced me more than the fire did, because deep inside, I knew I had lived the same lukewarm way, mocking faith, living in sin, convincing myself I still had time. The demons revealed themselves next, not with horns and pitchforks like cartoons, but as twisted mockeries of humanity. Their eyes were pits of endless hate, their bodies grotesque, some winged, some crawling like animals. They didn't just torment, they reenacted. One seized me and poured liquor down my throat, and as I gagged, another whispered every filthy thought I had ever hidden. They laughed because I couldn't escape myself. In that place, your sins aren't memories. They are living, breathing executioners. And then came the sound of chains. Heavy, dragging, as if someone was being pulled closer. From the shadows I saw a man, bound, his face contorted in something that was not human anymore. His mouth kept moving, muttering things under his breath. When he lifted his head, I recognized him instantly. I had seen that face on every book cover, every documentary. It was Ted Bundy. His once slick grin was gone, replaced by teeth gnashing like an animal. His words were barely whispers, but I heard them clear. "This place is forever. Don't think charm works here." Every soul around me screamed louder, as if his presence pulled them deeper. My stomach turned to ice, because if even a man like him was just another prisoner here, what chance did I have? That was when I realized I wasn't a spectator. I was one of them. Bundy's presence filled the place with a dread I cannot put into human words. His face, once clean-cut and charming in photographs, was now a twisted parody of itself. The eyes were hollow caverns, glowing faintly like embers, but not with light, more like dying coals of a fire that would never go out. He leaned toward me, chains rattling as they cut into his flesh, and whispered, "You thought you had time, didn't you? So did I. I thought repentance at the end would save me. But hell doesn't let go." His laugh was dry, broken, like shattered glass grinding together. Before I could even move, hands grabbed me from behind, clawed, bony hands that dragged me down toward a pit. I fought against them, but every time I struggled, more arms wrapped around me, pulling me like prey into the depths. The floor opened up, and I fell into a furnace where people were writhing like insects in flame. Fire licked every inch of me, but it didn't consume me. It didn't kill me. It just tormented. I could feel my skin blister, but then it would seal again, only to blister once more. The screams around me were not just noise. They were sermons. Each scream carried words, stories, confessions. I heard a man cry out that he was a preacher who preached for money. Another woman screamed that she had hated her neighbor but never confessed it. Then I heard my own name, a voice I knew too well. It was my mother's. She wasn't supposed to be he. I prayed she hadn't ended in this place. But I heard her voice crying, "I warned you, son." The agony in those words broke me more than the fire did. I saw her face in the flames. Whether it was real or an illusion I cannot say, but it felt real enough to tear me apart. She wasn't being punished for her own sins. No, she was screaming because of mine. Every time I had laughed at her prayers, every time I had mocked her hymns, her face twisted in sorrow. It was as if hell used her voice to piece me, to make me feel the full weight of what I had rejected. Demons circled me, their laughter a chorus of cruelty. They took on the shapes of people I had hurt. One became the face of a woman I had once used and discarded. Her tears turned into fire. Another became a co-worker I had mocked for reading his Bible. Their words dripped with venom. You laughed at me then, Ray. Who's laughing now? And Bundy never left. He shuffled closer, dragging his chains, speaking in a constant mutter. He confessed to me in broken fragments. Charm. I thought charm could open every door, even heaven's. I smiled. I prayed. I even said the words they wanted me to say at the end. But the fire doesn't care. The judge saw my heart. He pointed at me with a trembling, skeletal finger. And he sees yours. Then the demons forced me to relive my own sins. They showed me in a mirror made of flame. I saw myself drunk, cursing God in the middle of the night. I saw myself with magazines of killers spread across my lap, feeding my fascination instead of feeding my spirit. I saw the moment I had whispered to my friend, "The devil whispers louder in Huntsville than the church bells ring." The demons replayed it again and again, their voices mocking me, until the words became a whip that lashed me over and over. The worst torment wasn't physical. It was knowing I belonged there. Every excuse I had made, every time I had said later to God, it all vanished. In that place, there was no later. There was no more time. I cried out for mercy. My voice cracked, but it came out like a hollow wail. God, please. Not here. Not this. But the darkness swallowed my words. The demons laughed harder. Bundy leaned closer and whispered, "This place is forever, Ray. Forever." In that moment, all hope drained out of me. My body collapsed under the weight of despair. The fire had eaten every defense I ever had. I was a man stripped bare, exposed before an eternal sentence. And I knew, if something didn't change, I would never leave. That was the climax. That was when I understood what hell truly is. Not just fire, not just demons, but the absolute certainty that there is no way out. When the last shred of hope drained out of me, when I truly believed I was chained to this place forever, something impossible happened. The fire around me began to shake, not from wind or quake, but from a power that hell itself could not contain. A violent rupture of light broke through the black sky above the pit. It wasn't soft or gentle like sunlight. No, this light was a storm, a blazing force that tore through the darkness like a sword splitting flesh. The demons shrieked and scattered like roaches when a lamp is turned on. Even Bundy recoiled, his chains rattling as he screamed. Then I saw him, Jesus. He didn't appear the way paintings show him. Not as a meek figure with calm eyes. No, he was radiant, terrifying, glorious beyond description. His eyes were flames that burned hotter than the fires of hell, yet they did not consume me. His robe was white, but it was the kind of white that no human fabric has ever held, glowing with a purity that hurt to look at. Around him thunder rolled, as if creation itself bent under his presence. When he spoke, his voice shook the pit. No one is safe who mocks my blood. Not killers, not liars, not lukewarm Christians. Every syllable cracked like lightning, reverberating through my soul. The fire itself bowed to his command. Demons clawed at their ease and fled into deeper shadows. Every soul screamed, not out of torment this time, but out of recognition. They knew the judge had arrived. I fell to my knees. I couldn't look at him. Every sin I had ever committed replayed in his presence like a reel of film. Not one was hidden. My mocking, my drinking, my fascination with darkness, every curse that slipped from my lips, it was all there, laid bare. His gaze pierced me, and for the first time, I understood the meaning of holy fear. Then he stretched out his hand toward me. The fire stopped burning me. The demons froze, powerless. His voice thundered again. You were given warnings. You mocked them. You laughed at your mother's prayers. You filled yourself with death and called it life. And now you see the truth. His words weren't cruel. They were sharp, righteous, unshakable. But then his tone changed. It was still powerful, but there was something else beneath it. Mercy. You will return, Raymond. You will return to warn them. For this place is not only for killers. It is for every soul that treats my sacrifice as nothing. You will tell them, no one is safe without me. Not one. In that instant, light enveloped me completely. The fire of hell was gone. The screams faded. The demons vanished. I was swallowed in brilliance, a warmth that burned away despair but left me trembling. My last memory before opening my eyes in the hospital was his face, closer than my own breath, and his words echoing, "Go back. Testify." When my eyes opened, I was gasping like a man pulled out of deep water. Bright hospital lights burned my vision, and nurses shouted that they had me back. They said I had been gone 11 minutes. To them, it was a miracle of medicine. To me, it was the mercy of God. Tears poured from my eyes uncontrollably. They thought it was delirium, but I knew I had been pulled from the edge of eternal fire. For weeks afterward, I couldn't sleep without hearing the screams, without smelling sulfur in my dreams. I'd wake up soaked in sweat, trembling, begging God to let me stay out of that pit. At the same time, I wrestled with doubt. Who would believe me? I was a man who had mocked preachers, a drunk who laughed at sermons. Would anyone take me seriously? Yet his words rang in my ears like thunder. Go back. Testify. Every day was a battle. Fear of ridicule clashed with the burning urgency to speak. I felt both unworthy and chosen, crushed by the memory of hell, yet carried by the light of the one who pulled me out. In the months that followed my accident, I knew I could never return to the man I had been. The very thought of a bottle of whiskey turned my stomach. The magazines and books about killers that once fascinated me, I couldn't bear to touch them. One night I gathered them all in a box and burned them in my backyard. As the pages curled into ash, I felt something lift from me, like chains I didn't even know were wrapped around my soul were finally breaking. I started going to church again, but not the way I used to, mocking, skeptical, sitting in the back row. This time I went trembling. I listened to every word as if it might be the last warning I ever heard. But I didn't stay quiet. The first time I told my story, it wasn't planned. A small congregation in Baton Rouge had a testimony service, and I stood up with my hands shaking. My voice cracked as I said, I died, and I saw hell. The whole room went silent. I told them about Bundy, about the fire, about the words Jesus spoke. People wept. Some fell to their knees. That was the first time I realized why he sent me back, not just to save me, but to warn everyone else. Doors began to open after that. A pastor invited me to speak again. Then another. Before long I was standing in front of prison chapels, staring into the eyes of men in orange jumpsuits, some awaiting trial, some awaiting life sentences. I told them, I saw where the killers go, but I also saw where the liars and the lukewarm go. Don't fool yourself. This place is not only for monsters. It's for everyone who treats Christ like an accessory instead of a savior. Some of them cried. Some of them laughed. But I knew the seed was planted. I wasn't a polished preacher. I didn't have fancy words or a seminary degree. I stumbled. I shook, sometimes I even wept while speaking. But people listened because I was raw, because I had no reason to make this up. And no matter how many times I told the story, the memory never dulled. The smell of sulfur lingered in my mind. The sound of chains rattling still haunted me in the dark. But those memories kept me moving forward. Even outside of churches and prisons, I spoke wherever anyone would listen. Coffee shops, support groups, even truck stops. I'd tell strangers, hell is real. I've been there. Don't wait until it's too late. Some looked at me like I was crazy, but others leaned in with fear in their eyes. Over time, I began to realize something. I wasn't just warning others. I was saving myself daily by speaking. Every testimony was a step further from the pit, a step closer to the one who had pulled me out. It wasn't easy. Temptations still came. Doubt still whispered. But I clung to the words Jesus thundered in that pit. No one is safe without me. Not one. And so my new life became a quest, not for comfort, not for reputation, but for obedience. To speak the warning, no matter the cost. Now I am 78 years old. The years since that night have been both heavy and holy. Heavy because the screams of hell have never fully left me. Holy because the mercy of Jesus has kept me walking. I look back on my life and I see wasted decades. But I also see a God who gave me one last chance when I deserved none. I live simply now. I do not chase wealth or comfort. My greatest joy is standing before people, even if it's just 2 or 3, and telling them, hell is real. Eternity is real. And Jesus is the only way. I should have died in that casino wreck, but I was sent back for this reason. If you hear my voice, don't brush it aside. Don't tell yourself you have time. I said those words once, and I saw where they led. Take his warning seriously, because in the pit I heard him thunder, no one is safe without me. Not one. That is the truth that saved my soul.